First, I want to know whether you're listening, because if you're not listening, well, then what's the point, right? So, were you raised in the church? Like, really? Were you raised in the church? Whether you were Baptist, Pentecostal, Lutheran, Catholic, whatever religion. Well, I was. I wanted to talk to you about my beliefs and how my beliefs begin to morph into something that was unfamiliar, disappearing, or it was changing, and it didn't feel comfortable. And I kind of thought I was losing it. And although I had made a decision or not made a decision, I just felt like it was time to make a decision. In December 2016, I decided to, I wasn't going to do a New Year's resolution, but I wanted to do something different because I was over church. There was something, and that didn't feel right to me because I was a pastor's daughter. Not just a pastor's daughter, a bishop's daughter. And for me, that was what life was about for the longest time. But it really, real deep down inside, really wasn't what was the most important thing. But I couldn't say it, didn't know it. It just felt like, by me asking questions, that really was not, I won't say acceptable, but there wasn't an acceptable answer, or wasn't an answer that was, I think, there was no answer. So I grew up in a pretty religious and strict environment. One of two girls, and I was the firstborn. And at an early age had the responsibility, because I had a gift, because of course all pastors' kids, all church kids have a gift. And I truly did. I did not have music lessons, but I became the minister of music. I learned how to hear music, and I could pick it out on the piano, and I could teach music. And so, of course, being a pastor's daughter in a very young church at the time, I became the minister of music. We had a musician, but she moved on, grew up, and she went on to college. So that left it with me, and I was about 13 years old at the time, and I remember that Sunday, oh my God, I remember the first time that I had to play, like, in front of the church, and we had a very small church, right? Storefront church, very linear, straight down the middle, come in the door, pews, pulpit, out, that kind of church. So it was Communion Sunday, which is big, and my dad decided that Sunday would be the time he springs it on me to let me know I'm going to be playing the music. And I had to come up in the front of everybody, right? Because this was a linear, like a tubular, like, building. So it was only one way up. And then, again, there was the front, the altar, the piano, then the pulpit, right? So maybe my dad recognized that, I was musical because he was musical. He enjoyed jazz. He could, sing. My mom could sing. My dad played an instrument, and I just played around with it. Even when I was younger, they bought me a little toy organ. You could play with it, and I played it. And I eventually got a piano. And that piano, I guess me playing around with it and him seeing what I could do, he just thought, I guess it's time. I don't remember the story 100%, but I do remember sitting in front of the church and playing, and they began to sing, right? And I began to play in the key of C, the only. Did you hear me? The only key I knew how to play in. Now, one of the songs that they sang was in the key of C. They were singing in F sharp and G and B and all, and I was playing in C. It was the most humiliating experience that I could ever remember in my young life. The only thing that I can now look back and remember that saved me was the fact that my back was towards the audience, right? So I was playing, but my back was towards the audience, and I was humiliated. And I don't ever remember us talking about that thing, and I'm sure we didn't, because I was obedient, and I'm sure that my dad was patting me on the back in some kind of way in front of the people. But from that point on, I had to make myself learn a certain thing in order to protect myself. That's how I became the minister of music. At 13 years old, put up front, play this, and I guess in my mind, I thought I'd never want to be in that position again. So somehow I learned other keys. It was about 4 choirs that I had, even at the age of 13, right? Pretty deep. I am 61, right? So at that time, having female leadership or having females in a position to go to for assistance, especially in the craft that it was male dominated. I didn't know any other females who played, who taught, pastor's daughter. There may be 1 or 2, but not in a position that I was in, because there was nobody else in the household that could help me, and I was just learning all this on my own. But when we went to our convocations, because I was part of the Church of God in Christ in the southern states, there really weren't a whole lot of female sheroes or people to look up to. But when I went to convocation, there was Maddie Moss Clark. Oh my God, or larger than life. And at that time, for a female to have such, I won't say power, but influence, was huge. I would go to choir rehearsal, and I would see what she did and blah, 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 blah. And this must be the right way to go. And when I came back from those kinds of experiences, those were the types of memories that I brought back with me. Not necessarily work on my behalf, but I worked on it because, again, it was a male-dominated industry, male-dominated part of the church. So I lived that life. My father was a successful bishop, and he left the Church of God in Christ and, became his own, started his own, I won't say denomination, but group. And was successful in that. And at that time, I kind of decided, for me, this is as far as I wanted to go. I think at that point I got in a divorce. The life was kind of weird. So I got a divorce, was married for about 20-ish years. And my dad passed, which I think was the catalyst for change in my life. And divorced for about 10, remarried. Life kind of changed, was good for a while, went back to school, got a lot of things going on, but somehow nothing was really touching me. And I no longer fit into a category. That part of my life was gone. I had cut off or had stopped being the minister of music person, and while my father was ill, I kind of took care of him in the latter days. Learned a lot, with my father passing, past a certain part of my life, that part of my life, and then began the discovery of the new part of my life. But I didn't know what was going on, but I knew something was going on. December 2016, that is when things began to, they just came to a head. Some issues had happened in my life. Things were not melding the way that I thought that they should. I was working in my area, gone back and got my education, have been certified in certain areas, but things still were not clicking on all cylinders for me. So I had gone to a service or joined the church that I enjoyed, where on the New Year's Eve we'd have a big to-do, in a local venue, and it was really fun, a big party. We started out with white parties. It was good, I enjoyed that. And it was necessary for me at that time. That New Year's Eve, or around that New Year's Eve, I felt like it was time for me to make some changes, and I was over it. I was over church. I was over going to church. I was not going to go to a New Year's Eve service. But that year, I didn't go to church. I didn't go to the big to-do. I just didn't feel like I wanted to do New Year's Eve the same anymore. It wasn't the first time, but this was pretty profound. And from that point, I started to think. And instead of making a New Year's resolution, I decided that I was just going to come straight up with God. I was just going to tell him how I felt about how I felt, and what I thought I deserved, and all of that. It just all came up. It just was a lot. Have you ever been in that position where you just know that there's something more than what you can imagine? It's just something inside of you that's tugging at you, or that you know it's there and you can't shop it away, you can't cry it away, you can't write it away. There's something there. So I said to God, in that, that I'm over it kind of, I'm going to share in our next time together what it was that I said to God that changed the course of my life. What did I do and what did I say that changed everything? It even influenced me to cut my hair off. Cut my hair off. I'm telling you, I got so much to talk about. If you're interested, don't forget to like, to share, and to subscribe, right? Leave me some comments. If you have been in church, if you have had some questions, if you didn't have anybody to talk to about it, if you feel like some of the things that you've learned in your lifetime, even if it's not about church, it might be about something else, but you're coming to some conclusions, and it's important for you. Leave me a message in the comment. Let me know what you think, and I'll tell you about what I said to God that changed my life.